Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I found my End the Fed hat. Pretty cool, huh? I had this hat made back in, back when Ron Paul was running for president. I really liked his stance. I really liked the whole freedom movement that he was pushing, and it was really popular with the younger crowd. I was probably, I don't know, I was in my early mid 30s at the time, and I tried to, promote his message a little bit by wearing this hat around. So since I was wearing the hat, I thought I'd bring out the cup too. And this cup here was sent to me from Acme Jetpack, Monaco64. You guys familiar with his channel? I'll leave a link down in the description for you guys. He's the home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So, yep, robbing Americans since 1913. End the Fed. Anyway, thought I would talk a little bit about the HELOC. This is home equity. I'm sorry, guys. Home equity line of credit, and JPMorgan Chase is no longer accepting applications for these HELOCs, and it must be because they foresee a problem with people making their house payments here in the future, and that there's going to be foreclosures. Because when you basically are taking out a HELOC, you are taking out a second line of credit or a second mortgage on your house in order to tap into that equity. And if you were to foreclose on the house and quit making the payments and they have to auction it off or whatever happens to it, the first loan are the people who get paid first, and then the second loan, like these HELOCs, would be like getting what's ever left over. So obviously JPMorgan Chase is very concerned about having to deal with the foreclosures coming up in the future, and they do not want to give out these second line of credits, and so they're no longer accepting applications for it. Now, you can refinance your home and get the equity out of it, but as far as taking out that HELOC, that second loan, they're no longer taking applications for it. So that's very interesting to kind of, show a little bit more of the signs of the times when it comes to this housing market and whether or not people are going to be getting foreclosed on here in the future. Obviously, JPMorgan Chase is concerned about it, or else they wouldn't be, denying those applications any further. And they don't have any idea when they're going to be, starting this back up again, or at least I didn't see anything that says that they're going to be starting it back up at any time soon. So yeah, after the recession is, done run its course, then maybe we might see the HELOCs kicking back in again. But as far as right now, JPMorgan Chase is not into it. Thought I would talk a little bit, too, about the credit cycle. Now, this is kind of how I see things when it comes to the credit cycle. A lot of people talk about the business cycle, but to me, it's more about the credit cycle, because it follows right along with it. About every 10 years, you see like a boom and bust to the credit cycle. And to me, it's a lot like farming. It's like, because I used to raise a lot of, chickens and had like a hobby farm and stuff like that going on. So to me, like, the credit cycle is a lot like raising, plants or, animals or anything else. You start off with something very small, it grows very big, and then after one point you have to harvest. And so if you can imagine like a farmer tilling the ground, that's like the recession taking place. It looks dirty, it's nasty, nobody really is, it's kind of eyesore looking. And then he plants the seeds, and this is like, just the very beginning of the credit cycle. And then the plants sprout, and you talk about the green shoots, and everybody kind of, you hear a lot about that once the recession has finally kind of run its course and things start taking off again. You hear a lot about, like, the investors out there talking about green shoots. Then as the plants grow, the credit becomes easier and easier to get. And this is like the fertilizer to these plants. This is where, the bankers are like pushing out more and more loans out there to people, and you see the plants getting bigger and bigger and more beautiful. And then at one point where you see like the garden just looks awesome. Everything is just beautiful. The animals are just healthy and everything is just awesome. And then the harvest takes place and everything goes to hell again. And it just looks nasty and dirty and dead and just messed up. And that's kind of a lot like the credit cycle, because you think about it, like these green shoots, this is the credit that's just starting, and as the fertilizer goes into the plants, this is where they keep lowering the credit criteria. So like, the availability of loans becomes more frequent. They're dropping the credit ratings that you need, the down payments that you need. This is like the fertilizer to the system. And then at some point, when it gets down to like zero down payments and, just basically show us your paycheck and you get a car, this is where you're getting towards the end of the credit cycle. And then the harvest time, This is when everybody starts getting foreclosed on and going bankrupt and just losing everything they have, because now the farmer gets to go in there and take all the good stuff for himself. This is like the bankers going in there and buying up everything for pennies on the dollar, all the rich elite people. That's the harvest time. Then once everything is just completely decimated and looks like hell, they till all that down again and then reestablish another credit cycle. And this is like reseeding again, starting off with the most creditworthy people who get the first shot at it. And then as things start to grow, the credit criteria starts to drop again. It's a very similar cycle to farming. If you look at it like that, then you can kind of get a better idea on how this credit cycle kind of works. And a great example of it was a guy that I used to work for. He had a company called Builder Supply. And he built the most beautiful stores that you could ever imagine. And I'll leave a link down in the description for these stores, because I went around the day that they closed down. Now, it was probably, I think it was 2012 when the stores finally shut down. So it was a little bit after the recession had finally, run its course. But it didn't matter, because by that point, he was so far in the hole that there was no way that he could pull himself out of it. And they eventually just had to, go bankrupt and shut the stores down. And really who ended up with it was the museum ended up with one of them, which was a really good deal for him, because it was, like I said, these are really nice stores with some murals on the walls and everything else. So it was a great place for the museum to pick up. And the other one turned into a U-Haul. If you can believe that. U-Haul went in there and they established their business inside of the other, because he had two stores, one in this town and one a couple of towns over. But at first, like when the dot-com bubble bursted, he had some very small stores. He was very small time. And the other lumberyard that was in town, there was three of them. And one of them, who was like the big dog, he shut down. And that was the one that I had actually worked for before Builder Supply. And when they shut down, that like left all the business going over to Builder Supply. And he took this business as the expansion started coming, and he took this business and really started rolling with it. So by 2005, he was like in it. He had like all the business in the county. He had like everything going on for it. And while people were building homes like crazy at that time, he just expanded these stores to beyond belief. And he was able to get a lot of loans for this, because everybody was like, man, he's the top man in the game. He's got it going on. And then when the financial crisis took place, it didn't matter how many 2x4s that guy sold. It wasn't going to be enough to keep those stores open from the amount of debt that he had. So it's like it was a very good example of overexuberance. And basically taking on more than you could handle. Like these kids who went off there and bought the most expensive house that their paycheck would allow them to get. That was very much what he had done with those stores. Is he built the biggest stores that were possible at the time. So if there was any downturn in the market, there was no way he was going to be able to handle it. Just like a lot of these people who have these houses out there, they're going to be in the very same situation where, yeah, you might be able to get your job back or get a different job, but the amount of damage that is done won't allow you to make the payments that you once had. So unless, you had some like savings set aside, or, just had a game plan to deal with the downturn in the economy, if you were extended out to the very end of your paycheck, meaning that your paycheck made your car payment, your house payment, the insurance, the bills, and then you had nothing left, the downturn is going to kill you. It's pretty much going to cause you to have to go bankrupt, especially if it lasts much longer. So you only get a couple of months, and then the debt collectors are like, hey, pay up or we're repossessing everything. So that's pretty much what happened with him, and that's going to happen here again. And JPMorgan Chase, they recognize that. That's why they're not issuing out those HELOCs for who knows how long. Anyway, sorry I rambled on about that. Hope it was a bit informative. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.